Welcome to our 2036 presidential election coverage. Tonight, we'll be covering the primary elections themselves, as candidates have been campaigning for months. But first, let's check out the polling. Currently, Beshear remains the frontrunner over Joe Kennedy III and progressive newcomer Michelle Wu. Currently, a new addition to the top four is Josh Stein, Senator of North Carolina. Meanwhile, in the middle four, Governors Ruben Gallego and Alyssa Slotkin are tied at 6%, and the new addition to the middle four, who was once in the top four actually, Hakeem Jeffries and Andy Kim, both tied at 4%. Currently in the bottom four, we have Ro Khanna, Humaine Williams, Chelsea Clinton, and Katie Porter, going in order, of course, 3%, 2%, and the last two at 1%. Meanwhile, in the Iowa caucus, Andy Beshear has a lead over Joe Kennedy. Trailing them is Josh Stein and Alyssa Slotkin. In New Hampshire, Joe Kennedy has a lead over Michelle Wu. Behind them is Beshear at 15 and Stein at 10. In Nevada, Michelle Wu and Ruben Gallego are both tied at 23%. Currently at 18 is Beshear and 13 is Joe Kennedy. In South Carolina, the establishment pick of former House Speaker Hakeem Jeffries is at 20%, doing very well in this moderate and establishment state. And he currently tied with Joe Kennedy, who's also 20% of course. And at 14 is Beshear, 12 at Stein. And in the Republican primary, Vice President Mike Garcia remains at 18%, currently the frontrunner, and behind him is Secretary of the Treasury Glenn Youngkin. Youngkin is also the former governor of Virginia. Behind him is Florida Senator Maria Salazar and Chris Sununu, the Senator of New Hampshire. In the middle four, we have Attorney General George P. Bush. Behind him is Senator John Duffy. Behind him is Iowa's Governor Ashley Hinson, hoping for a strong win in Iowa to boost her campaign. And behind her is Josh Hawley, Secretary of Transportation. In the bottom three, we have Caleb Hanna, Governor of West Virginia, at 3%. Currently, the 2% is Governor of Kansas, Jake LaTurner, and Representative Madison Cawthorn at 1%. For Iowa, currently Garcia has a lead over Youngkin. Ashley Hinson not doing too well, only at 15% despite being the governor of the state. Currently, Chris Sununu leads the pack in New Hampshire, doing better in his home state than Ashley Hinson is in hers. He's at 30%. Behind him is the Northeastern Republican Glenn Youngkin, hoping to do better in more Northeastern states, which might be a region dominated by Chris Sununu. Behind him is Bush, tied with Garcia. In Nevada, Garcia is tied with Maria Salazar. Currently trailing them is Youngkin and Sununu. The state is very good ground for Garcia and Salazar, both doing very well with Hispanics and suburban voters. And in South Carolina, it's currently tied between Garcia and Youngkin. Also tied in third and fourth are Bush and Sununu. Currently is now our poll closings out of the state of Iowa. The winner of this state might have crucial momentum going into the primary season. We now have a projection to make. We can project that the Iowa caucus will go to Andy Beshear. He will win in a very good performance for his campaign. Let's check out the delegate totals. As you can see, he will win in a very big victory in the rural areas, doing well in suburban areas as well. However, his victory isn't as good as it really should be. People like Josh Stein and Alyssa Slotkin did very well in some more populated blue-collar areas, in which he should have won. However, he did a strong second in those areas, showing strength across the state. Joe Kennedy has come in second place. Meanwhile, in the extended list, as you can see, tied for third place is Michelle Wu and Josh Stein. Wu was not expected to do so well. She was actually expected to perform about 5th place, but she hopped up and got about 7 delegates, of course again tied with Josh Stein. Meanwhile, Alyssa Slotkin, a very disappointing performance, only 3 delegates along with Ruben Gallego. Hakeem Jeffries got 2 along with Kim at 1. And of course, on the in last place, you have Humaine Williams, only 1 delegate, not including all the other candidates who didn't even get any delegates. Meanwhile, we can now project that Glenn Youngkin will win the Iowa caucus on the Republican side, a major win for his campaign. He was not expected to win, but will upset Mike Garcia. As you can see, his win was powered by a win very similar to Andy Beshear, doing very well in suburban and rural areas. He will beat out Mike Garcia, who did so well in some urban and more conservative suburban areas. Not a good look for Garcia, losing to Glenn Youngkin in the crucial state of Iowa. Currently, you can see that Ashley Hinson got 6 delegates, tied with Sean Duffy. Not a very poor performance for the governor of the state. Duffy definitely outperforming expectations of being from neighboring Wisconsin and doing very well with blue-collar workers. The could mean very good news for him in the future. Meanwhile, Chris Sununu has 5 delegates, Bush has 3, Maria Salazar has 2, and Josh Hawley has 1. And here's the current primary map. It is 9-8 delegates for Andy Beshear, currently in the lead, against Joe Kennedy. And the primary map is the exact same, 9-8 for Youngkin, Garcia trailing him. And currently, Chelsea Clinton, Katie Porter, Humaine Williams, and Ro Khanna have all exited the race. All but one, Humaine Williams, do not win a single delegate in the Iowa primary. Iowa caucus, that is. Definitely not good for them, hence their exit from the race. Meanwhile, Caleb Hanna, Madison Cawthorn, Jake LaTurner, and Josh Hawley all exit. Very similar to Democrats, only Josh Hawley won a delegate in this race. They all counted on decent wins in Iowa, or decent performances at least, to power their campaigns, but they have not gained any voters since the beginning of the primary season, meaning that they will drop out of this race. And now the New Hampshire polling has Joe Kennedy at 21%, and tied for second or third place, really, is Michelle Wu and Andy Beshear, both had 20%. Andy Beshear's win in Iowa has fueled a stronger performance in the state. Currently trailing is Josh Stein. And in New Hampshire, for the Republicans, Chris Sununu leading over Glenn Youngkin by 9%. And now we have a major projection out of New Hampshire. We can project that Michelle Wu will win the New Hampshire primary on the Democratic side. In upset, she will beat out Andy Beshear and Joe Kennedy, win her first primary of the night. And in New Hampshire, as you can see, she's doing very well in the densely populated areas with cities like Nashua and Manchester. She'll beat out Joe Kennedy by a surprising 5%. Big win. As you can see, currently at 4 delegates, tied is Andy Beshear and Josh Stein. On the further list is Hakeem Jeffries at 2, and the rest, Gallego, Slotkin, and Andy Kim, are all at 1 delegate. Meanwhile, Chris Sununu will win the New Hampshire primary in a very large margin. His home state will give him every single county, and he will win by around 9%, just like the polling predicted. Currently, he has 7 delegates. Glenn Youngkin has 5, and at 4 is Garcia, 3 at Bush, and 1 for Hinson, Duffy, and Salazar. Here currently on the primary list, as you can see, Michelle Wu has taken first place, 14 delegates compared to Joe Kennedy's 13. Beshear also has 13, but given that he did not come in second place for the last primary, we're putting him in third place. And the primary map has Glenn Youngkin at 14 and Chris Sununu taking second place at 12. Similar to the Democratic primary, Garcia also has 12, but since he did not come in second place in the last primary, he will be in third place. And Andy Kim and Alyssa Slotkin have left the race. Both might be very good contenders for vice president in the future, being of interest to many voters. However, they did not have strong performances, Slotkin failing to do well in Iowa, and Kim failing to do well in New Hampshire for them to gain support, and they will lead the race. Meanwhile, Ashley Hinson, who wanted to win Iowa to stay in the race, has suspended her presidential campaign after poor performances in the first 2 primaries of the year. For Nevada, Michelle Wu currently has first place, 23%, a very progressive state, that is Nevada. Currently, Andy Beshear is at 2nd, and Ruben Gallego in 3rd, Kennedy in 4th. And in the Nevada primary, Mike Garcia has first place. Behind him is Glenn Youngkin, and then behind him is Maria Salazar, and behind her is Chris Sununu. And we now have major projection out of the state of Nevada. Currently, we can project that Ruben Gallego will win the Nevada primary on the Democratic side. An upset for him, but a very major boost to his campaign. As you can see, he will win Clark County, home of Las Vegas, and the bulk of Nevada's voters. He'll win in very many majority Hispanic areas and fuel his victory by around 6,000 votes over Andy Beshear. Currently, Michelle Wu will take 3rd, tied with Joe Kennedy with 6 delegates. And Josh Stein will also have 6 delegates, and Hakeem Jeffries has 3. Out of the Nevada primary, we can project that Maria Salazar will also win in an upset. As you can see, she will also win in many majority Hispanic areas, as well as Washoe County, home of Reno, which, along with Clark, is the 2nd most densely populated county in Nevada. She'll beat out Mike Garcia. In Nevada, as you can see, Glenn Youngkin has 4, tied with Bush, who also has 4, and Chris Sununu has 3, tied with Duffy, who also has 3. In the current primary map, Beshear has expanded his lead, taking back first place with 23 delegates. Joe Kennedy has 20, along with Michelle Wu. And the primary map for the Republicans, Glenn Youngkin has 20 delegates, and Mike Garcia has 18. Currently, the polling for the South Carolina primary has Hakeem Jeffries hoping to get his first win that will power his campaign to victory, much like Joe Biden's did in 2020. And while Joe Biden did not win the race in 2020, he still won the primary after a big win in South Carolina. Currently, Hakeem Jeffries, though, is currently in second place in polling. Josh Stein has hopped up to third place, and Beshear pushed down to fourth. On the Republican side, it's currently tied between Garcia and Youngkin, George P. Bush trailing at third place, and Sununu in fourth. And we have a major projection out of the state of South Carolina. We can now project that in South Carolina on the Democratic side, Josh Stein will upset Joe Kennedy and Hakeem Jeffries to win the South Carolina primary. As you can see, he will win in many suburban areas and more densely populated moderate areas. A big win for him and a big loss for Joe Kennedy and Hakeem Jeffries. Neither have won a race so far, though they were expected to win certain races, such as Hakeem Jeffries here in South Carolina and Kennedy in New Hampshire. A very big loss for Kennedy and a big win for Stein. As you can see, currently, Beshear took third place with 9 delegates, and Hakeem Jeffries was only in fourth place with 8. Ruben Gallagher took 6 delegates, and Michelle Wu 5. We also project that George P. Bush will win the South Carolina primary on the Republican side. Another upset here, he will beat out Mike Garcia by around 2%, doing very well in really almost every other area in the state. It's a very strange map, as you can see. He has support from pretty much many of the rural and more establishment areas. He will win with the county where Columbus is located, which will give him a very big boost in votes, though he did lose the Charleston area to Glenn Youngkin. A very big win, as you can see, for him here. Definitely very good for his campaign. This might help revitalize it and lead him to victory. As you can see, Glenn Youngkin and Sean Duffy came in third place, both with 8 delegates. Sununu took 6 delegates, and Maria Salazar took 7. And the primary map, it is an exact tie between 3 candidates, Beshear, Kennedy, and Stein. They all have 32 delegates together. And on the primary map is almost the exact same thing. Youngkin and Garcia are tied at 28 delegates. As you can see, in third place, tied for 22 delegates, is Bush and Sununu. Sean Duffy at 20 delegates. He's definitely making a unexpected rise, but he has not won any primaries yet. Maria Salazar at 17. And now let's look at some polling maps between current frontrunners Beshear and Glenn Youngkin. As you can see, Beshear will win this hypothetical matchup, 281-257, not including any toss-up states. As you can see, this map is pretty interesting. You have Wisconsin doing very well for Youngkin, and of course Montana and Kansas actually flipping for Beshear. Texas and Nevada and North Carolina are all very close. This election might be the first quote-unquote regular election in which no candidate was extremely unpopular or popular since maybe 2024. Meanwhile, Mike Garcia and Beshear, a slightly larger win for Beshear. He will win North Carolina in this scenario, though he would actually only win New Mexico by a smaller margin, while Garcia would improve in Nevada. And the polling map with Matthew McConaughey, the current independent frontrunner who very well may be the first independent president. Glenn Youngkin would take 222 electoral votes, not winning majority, while Beshear would win 200 and Matthew McConaughey 116. McConaughey would win many northeastern states along with Texas, his home state where he is governor. Definitely could be the first election since 1824 to go to the House. Meanwhile, with Joe Kennedy and Glenn Youngkin in a lot closer race, Kennedy loses the state of Pennsylvania but wins the state of North Carolina. He keeps Kansas but loses Montana. 276 electoral votes for Kennedy and 262 for Youngkin. Meanwhile, for Garcia and Kennedy, it would be a slightly larger win for Kennedy. As you can see, he would flip the state of Montana as opposed to with Youngkin and do better in some more northeastern areas. And with Matthew McConaughey, interestingly enough, Kennedy actually doing better than Beshear would. Currently, Garcia would still lead 245, Kennedy would have 223, and McConaughey 70. He would still win his home state of Texas, of course. And in the polling map of Josh Stein versus Glenn Youngkin, Stein would win a very big victory with 301 to 237, winning North Carolina by a pretty large margin, along with Montana, Kansas, and Alaska. And with Mike Garcia, who won 294 to 244, he would still win North Carolina by a pretty large margin, but lose Alaska and Montana. And with Matthew McConaughey, he'd actually come very close to victory. He would win 268 electoral votes. George P. Bush in this scenario would have 217, and McConaughey would have 53. In this scenario, vote splitting from Bush allows Josh Stein to win, as a very popular candidate from Texas might allow vote splitting to allow Josh Stein to carry the state of Texas for the first time for a Democrat since 1976. And thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like and subscribe for more videos like this. And leave a comment on what you thought of the video. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.